Welcome back, everyone, to Night 45 on Uncle 3's Ghost Story channel. Tonight, I'm sharing a tale sent in by a listener from Cambodia. Let's call him Sim. Sim is almost 30 now, and he chose not to share his full name or the exact location of this elementary school. All he told me was that this spiritual incident ultimately forced the school to shut down permanently. Sim didn't spend much time there, maybe 2 years before he transferred. The move happened because of some bizarre deaths that took place there. Sim only pieced the whole story together much later, after the events had already happened, by asking family members, former students, and neighbors who lived near the elementary school. According to Sim, the school was a 5-story building. The first floor was for grades 1 and 2, the second floor for grade 3, the third for grade 4, and the fourth floor for grade 5. The very top floor, the rooftop, was almost always locked. A major tragedy struck 1 year ago. It wasn't a regular school day. Sim only vaguely remembers it being something like a class meeting or perhaps a rehearsal for a performance. Sim was only 7 years old then, so the details are hazy because it happened so long ago. On that day, a mother, who was a parent representative, was talking to a teacher when she saw her own child up on the 5th floor on the rooftop. In a horrifying split second, the child reached their hand out, fell from the 5th floor and died. The mother sued the school, claiming they failed to provide adequate safety. She questioned why the guard hadn't secured the rooftop door, allowing her child to go up there and fall to their death. The school agreed to cover the funeral and related costs, but they absolutely refused to take responsibility for failing to protect the student. Their argument was that the tragedy happened during recess or non-class time, and the student's mother was present. They wondered why she wasn't watching her own child instead of chatting. The two sides blamed each other, but ultimately, the mother suffered the most significant loss. It was a performing arts practice day, and she was the parent representative in charge of organizing the special event. The school insisted that all rooftop doors were locked, noting that the metal door was hefty and difficult for an elementary student to open. The controversy dragged on for a year, but the incident eventually faded. There wasn't enough evidence to prove the school was criminally negligent. Uncle 3 notes that while the security might have been careless, the mother also bore some responsibility since she borrowed the school space for the event on a day when the school was technically closed, meaning guards couldn't be expected to patrol constantly. Then, exactly 1 year later, on the same day, which was a school holiday, it happened again. Another first-grade student died in the exact same way, falling from the rooftop. This second incident brought heavy scandal down on the school, given the similarity to the previous year's death. But the horror didn't stop there. Just 3 months later, while the second case was still being handled, a third incident occurred. This time, it was during dismissal in the afternoon. A frantic parent rushed up to a teacher, asking if he'd seen her daughter. The teacher hadn't noticed her. She was busy organizing things and was unable to keep track of all 40 students. Panic set in. Everyone immediately started searching because they were all terrified, though they wouldn't say it out loud, that this disappearance would turn into another tragedy. The security guards, knowing exactly where to look first, headed straight for the rooftop, and sure enough, they found the little girl standing there. Luckily, she hadn't jumped. Sim relayed that witnesses clearly saw the girl acting like she was sleepwalking. She wasn't in control of her movements and seemed to be reaching for something. The guard, prepared for the worst, swiftly grabbed the child and brought her down to the ground floor. When everyone surrounded her, asking what had happened, she told them she had been walking with a friend. This friend promised her a balloon if she followed them. So, she followed her friend to the rooftop. Once there, the friend offered the balloon and told her just to step forward and take it. She simply went to get the balloon and wasn't thinking about anything else. When she woke up, the guard was bringing her back downstairs. After that third incident, the school officially earned the reputation of being haunted, possessed by a vengeful spirit. Parents began pulling their children out. That's why Sim transferred schools. The building slowly emptied out and eventually became abandoned entirely. Sim moved on, grew up, and life normalized. Nothing strange seemed to happen in the area after the school closed. That is, until years later. Sim mentions that every country has restless, reckless teenagers. In his neighborhood in Cambodia, there was a group of teens, roughly 15 to 18 years old, who often caused trouble, stealing, street racing, or fighting. For some reason, fate, or perhaps something more sinister, led them to choose the abandoned school for their mischief. Sim figures they must have challenged each other to explore the haunted place, with some penalty for anyone who chickened out. Once they got inside, they encountered something alarming. First, they noticed dead animals littered across all the floors, including larger creatures like cats, dogs, and even foxes. Since Sim's community was close to the jungle, some dead forest animals were found inside the school as well. But even that wasn't enough to scare them off. Not until they reached the rooftop. There, they discovered a badly decomposed human body. That's when they scattered, running for their lives. Despite their terror, the teens reported the incident to the Cambodian police, fearing they'd be implicated. When police arrived, they identified the victim as a male beggar who had been dead for over 2 months. Rumors immediately escalated that the school was actively attracting some sort of powerful, invisible force. It was this frenzy of gossip that prompted Sim to ask his mother if he had really attended that specific school. Sim's mother confirmed it, explaining that she transferred him after the incidents involving the 3 students. The school was permanently closed and abandoned after those tragedies. Investigators entered the non-operational school to look into the beggar's death. The school administrators, before sealing the building, claimed they had secured the stairwells tightly with heavy-duty padlocks. It should have been impossible for anyone to climb from the 1st floor to the 5th floor and die there. But here's the unsettling part. The teens who found the body unanimously claimed they walked straight up to the rooftop without seeing a single locked door. How did the beggar reach the 5th floor and die? And what exactly killed him? The story became a major sensation. The local people grew terrified. They worried that the malevolent spirit inside might drag their children, husbands, or wives into the abandoned school to kill them. Fearing the growing darkness, The locals invited a revered monk from a nearby temple to investigate. Upon arriving, the monk immediately stated that the spiritual hatred haunting the school was overwhelming and that the malevolent spirit had grown. Initially, when the incidents first occurred, the spirit was just a child. But because the school remained abandoned for years, the child spirit fed on the souls of passing animals, cats, dogs, chickens, and wild forest creatures. These souls were inherently more powerful than a normal spirit, allowing the entity to grow over time. The ultimate proof of its maturity was that it managed to kill a grown man, the beggar. No one knew how it killed him. The authorities simply ruled the death sudden. But the locals questioned why. If he just wanted to die, he would climb all the way to the rooftop instead of dying in an empty classroom. The monk and his colleagues performed chants and rituals. They discovered a tragic murder had happened there long ago. The monk revealed that a man, let's call him Vin, who was known to be hot-tempered and violent, had brought his own child to the school. In a moment of uncontrolled rage, Vin threw his biological child off the rooftop. The soul of that murdered child became the wicked spirit haunting the elementary school. Everyone has forgotten this old murder case because it happened so long ago. Only the monks could see the demonic spirit and ask why it committed such malicious acts. The spirit explained that when it was killed, it was only 6 or 7 years old, maybe first or second grade. That's why it exclusively lured children of its own age. It would wait until no one was paying attention, lead them to the 5th floor, stand in a corner, and offer a balloon. When the children stepped forward to take the balloon, they would miss their footing and fall to their deaths. Over the years, consumed by loneliness and hatred, the spirit practiced its dark magic, feeding on the souls of animals that wandered into the school. It became a full-fledged demonic entity. Then one day, the beggar unwittingly stumbled upon the building. The entity killed him and consumed his soul. At this point, the monk added a shocking detail that stunned Sim's entire community. The beggar wasn't just a random victim. He was the spirit's father, Vin. The very man who had murdered the 7-year-old child. Vin had been sentenced to nearly 20 years in prison after throwing his son off the roof. Upon his release, he returned to the area. Unable to find work, he became a vagrant, begging for money. Although locals vaguely remembered Vin when his name came up, they didn't recognize the old beggar as him. Then, the day the beggar, Vin, was drawn by some dark force into the abandoned school was his last day on earth. The monks then performed rites and he advised the vengeful spirit to return to the temple. According to Cambodian belief, spirits that kill their parents cannot achieve reincarnation and must suffer in the 18 layers of hell forever. The entity could not find peace because of the sin of filial impiety, killing its father. The monks successfully subdued the spirit, bringing it back with them to protect the community. The story, Uncle 3 concludes, shows how everything, hatred and love, ultimately stems from the family. That's why family education is critically important. That's the end of the story. I'll see you next time on Uncle 3's Asian Ghost Story channel.